Loyalty has a shelf life. Teenagers protect each other by instinct, a reflex built long before anyone can explain why. Don't tell. Stick together. Handle it as a group. It's one of the oldest unwritten rules of adolescence. But that rule was built for smaller stakes. A curfew broken. A car dented. Not this. Not a body recovered from the water off a Mississippi barrier island. And a version of events that hasn't moved in weeks, no matter how many times it's been asked to. There's a new number in the Nolan Wells case now. $100,000. Not for information about where an 18-year-old went that day. For information about what actually happened to him, and who was standing close enough to see it. Money changes the math of loyalty. Not instantly. Not for everyone. But for someone. In a group of friends large enough, scared enough, tired enough of carrying a secret. It eventually does. That is not cynicism. That is how six-figure rewards have worked in cold cases for decades. They don't buy the truth directly. They buy the moment someone finally decides the weight of staying quiet costs more than the guilt of speaking up. This stopped being a missing person case back in July. It stopped being a tragic drowning case shortly after that. Once the questions kept multiplying instead of closing. What it has become, deliberately, publicly, is something else entirely. A hunt. Not for a body. For accountability. If this is your first time here, welcome. This channel exists for cases exactly like this one. Still unfolding. Still contested. Built only from what can actually be confirmed. No speculation wearing the costume of fact. Just the record, followed as far as it goes. This case is nowhere near finished. So stay close. Before it was a hunt for accountability, it was a search. 2 days of it. The Coast Guard, volunteer boaters, a rescue group scanning the water around Horn Island for any sign of him. When they finally found Nolan Wells, there were no obvious signs of injury. That should have made the case simpler. It didn't. Both the state's autopsy and the family's independent one have come back undetermined. The doctor who conducted the private exam has not ruled out foul play. Weeks later, there is still no clean, comfortable answer for how an 18-year-old went to a barrier island for the 4th of July and came home in a body bag. Center Point Church, Ocean Springs, Mississippi, July 20th. Hundreds of people filled the pews that day. Nolan's family, his classmates, his teammates, a community trying to hold itself together in real time. Outside, the cameras were not local. They were national. By the time Nolan Wells was buried, his death had already outgrown Ocean Springs. It had outgrown Mississippi. What started as a 4th of July boat trip had become a national conversation about who gets believed, who gets protected, and who gets left to explain a 2-day gap in a story that never quite added up. Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy. Most eulogies look backward, toward memory, toward grief, toward the shape of a life that ended too soon. This one did that too. But it also did something a eulogy almost never does. It issued a challenge. Sharpton didn't just mourn Nolan Wells inside that church. He spoke directly to whoever in that community was still staying quiet. He was not on that island by himself, he told the congregation. Somebody, he said, saw something. Somebody knows something. Then came the number. $50,000, funded through Sharpton's organization, the National Action Network, for information leading to an arrest and a conviction. Before the service had even ended, filmmaker Tyler Perry, who had quietly covered the cost of the funeral itself, sent word to Sharpton that he would match it. $100,000. Announced inside a church, over a casket, with Nolan's mother sitting close enough to hear every word land. That kind of number doesn't stay contained to a church. It travels. A number like that recalculates a friendship. It turns a group chat into a liability. Because somewhere among the people who were on Horn Island on the 4th of July, a 6-figure reward just became a very expensive reason to keep saying nothing. Before we look at the aggressive legal moves that happened behind the scenes that very same day, I want to hear from you. Do you think a $100,000 reward is enough to make someone finally break their silence? Or will the pressure of the group hold? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Your perspective helps us think through these cases. And if you appreciate this kind of deep dive investigation, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next update. The funeral itself was proof of how far this case had already traveled. Director Spike Lee sat among the mourners. So did former NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens. The family's own fundraiser, meanwhile, had already climbed past $700,000 in public donations, money that had nothing to do with a reward and everything to do with how many strangers, watching from a distance, had decided this case deserved their attention. That is the environment the reward dropped into. Not a quiet small-town tragedy. A story with cameras already pointed at it, and now a price tag attached to the silence inside it. Think about what that does, practically, to a friend group that has spent weeks giving the same account to reporters, to investigators, to each other. Every one of them now knows two things at once. Their story is being watched by more people than they can count, and one of them, just one, could end this by picking up the phone. That is not a comfortable thing to sit inside of. It's designed not to be. Here is what almost no one was watching that same day. While Sharpton was still at the podium, while the reward was still being announced, a second, quieter kind of pressure was already moving through the mail. Attorney Ben Crump, representing the Wells family, working alongside the Mississippi law firm Carroll Bufkin, PLLC, had letters going out, dated July 20th, the same day as the funeral, addressed to the friends who had been with Nolan on Horn Island, and to their parents. They're called spoliation letters. The name sounds bureaucratic. It is not. A spoliation letter is a formal notice from an attorney, and its function is simple: preserve everything. Every text, every photo, every deleted Snapchat, every location ping from an app like Life 360. Because litigation, the letter stated plainly, is reasonably anticipated. Read that phrase again. Not possible. Reasonably anticipated. In legal terms, that is not a warning. It is a declaration. It tells the recipient, we are building a case, and you are already standing inside it. The reach of those letters didn't stop at teenagers and their parents. Reports would later surface that similar notices had gone out to law enforcement, to prosecutors, to the coroner's office, even, by some accounts, reaching into the local judiciary itself. Subpoenas followed for records from Snapchat, TikTok, Meta, WhatsApp, and Life 360. While parts of the internet were busy spreading rumors of arrest warrants that never existed, the real development was happening far more quietly than that. No handcuffs, no perp walk, just a law firm, methodically, placing an entire circle of young people, and the institutions around them, on formal notice. Do not delete anything. We are coming, and we will know if you did. There's a reason the digital footprint matters, this much here. When an autopsy comes back undetermined, when there's no wound, no weapon, no single physical fact that closes the case, the timeline itself becomes the evidence. A text sent at the wrong hour, a location ping that doesn't line up with story, a deleted thread that someone assumed no one would ever ask about, in a case built on conflicting accounts instead of forensic certainty. A phone can matter more than a body ever could. So what, exactly, are all these letters trying to preserve? Go back to July 4th, Horn Island. Around 3 in the afternoon, the accounts start to diverge. Nolan's friends have said he chose to stay behind, that he wanted to keep talking with a young woman on the island, identified publicly only as Katie. Katie, for her part, has said she assumed Nolan was getting on the boat with the group that brought him there. Her family has since said she never actually saw him board. 2 accounts. 2 different final chapters for the same afternoon. And somewhere in the space between them sits a stretch of time that nobody involved has been able to fully close. Now put yourself where these teenagers are standing. You're 18, maybe 19. You went to an island for a holiday and came home without one of your friends. Now the FBI is involved because Horn Island sits on federal land. A national civil rights attorney is building a case with your name somewhere inside it. Investigators are subpoenaing the app you use to talk to your friends, and the app your parents use to track you. And somewhere out there, $100,000, now more, is sitting on the table, payable to the first person willing to say something different than what's already been said. That is not a small amount of pressure to carry at 18 years old. And it isn't only pressure pushing from one direction. The FBI has also confirmed it's looking into threats made against people connected to this case. Messages serious enough to cross state lines, serious enough to draw federal attention. So the teenagers at the center of this aren't just weighing loyalty against reward. Some of them say they're weighing loyalty against their own safety. Fear can silence someone just as effectively as friendship can, sometimes more effectively, which raises an uncomfortable possibility that some of what looks like a unified story isn't loyalty at all. It might be self-preservation, dressed up to look the same. So the real question was never just about the reward. It's about what that kind of money does to a group of people who have, so far, told a fairly consistent story. Does six figures buy the truth? Or does it just buy a more convenient version of one? Here is what's true and worth sitting with. $100,000 cannot bring Nolan Wells back. Neither can a subpoena. Neither can a spoliation letter, or a grand jury, or a courtroom months from now. Nothing being built, legally, financially, undoes what happened on that island. But it can do something else. It can make silence expensive. It can make deletion risky. It can make a story that's been repeated for weeks a little harder to keep repeating, if it was never the whole story to begin with. None of that guarantees an answer. Money has failed to crack cold cases before. Fear has outlasted far smaller rewards than this one. It is entirely possible that everyone who knows something keeps deciding, day after day, that silence is still the safer bet. But it is getting more expensive to make that bet every week this case stays open, and expensive bets, eventually, tend to get reconsidered. As of this recording, the reward has already climbed past its original 100,000, growing every time someone new steps forward to back the family publicly. The digital forensics are still being processed. The grand jury has not convened. No one has been named a suspect. No one has been charged. What exists right now is a widening gap between what was said in the days after July 4th and what a six-figure number is now daring someone to say instead. We'll be here when that gap closes. Only the confirmed facts. Nothing dressed up. Nothing invented. So here's the question worth sitting with before you go. Do you think $100,000 is enough to break a silence that's already held this long? Tell us in the comments below. And if you want to be here when this case moves, subscribe, because it is moving. For now, it's just moving quietly.